right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here in Paradise, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a witness in the 70s and 80s, that being myself, Stacy Bauman. As I like to do each week, we like to at least issue a trigger warning. We try to have some fun here. We try to be educational, review history, personal experiences, and more. Just note, nothing said here is trying to be offensive. It is simply my own take on my own experience as a Jehovah's Witness, never meant to offend. Welcome into Paradise this week. It's that time again. The governing body has released the May 2026 JW broadcast, and as you have come to expect, it's chock full of the kind of elevated wisdom you can only find inside Jehovah's Witnesses. I want to jump right into it this week. Remember, there will ever only be exactly one May 2026 JW broadcast, and I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to share that this one is hosted by governing body member Jodi Jedele. And from the outset, I immediately knew this was going to be a very special episode. As is the current format, there is usually a talk, a good 10 to 15 minute talk by one of the members of the governing body, followed by all their regular features in the monthly broadcast. But for those interested, you can put future King Priest Jedele into your Google bar right now and see that he is much more than a member of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. You see, with just one simple search in Satan's internet, you'll find that our host, Brother Jedele, has held several important spiritual positions in the past. Upon his water baptism as a Jehovah's Witness, King Jedele, who took a vow of poverty, as they all do, to work at the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, decided at one point to leave his post in the watchtower to become the managing director at Touchstone International Properties, where tonight you can watch him on YouTube encouraging people to visit a kingdom hall and survive Armageddon. Well, no, actually not. You can watch him as he encourages soon-to-be-dead non-Jehovah's Witnesses to become CCIMs, which stands for Certified Commercial Investment Members. What? Wait a minute. Yes, because when your sole purpose for existing is to warn others of their impending doom on planet Earth, you can also encourage them to become investors into the same system of things you spend Saturdays telling them will soon be destroyed. It's all very puzzling. Do you see how this works? My favorite part of watching a member of the governing body teach, even on their own YouTube, is when that future king mentions that part of his curriculum for becoming an investor in Satan's world includes a section on ethics and advanced negotiations. And no, I'm not kidding. Go watch his YouTube. Because nothing says ethical like giving someone a certification to invest in real estate in Satan's old system of things, and then killing those same people any second now for not putting the kingdom first. I don't know. Maybe you could explain it to me. For those not in the know, the governing body will be in heaven actively taking part in killing people here on earth who didn't obey the governing body. Behold, the world of Brother Jodi Jedele, and he is our host this month for JW Broadcasting. Yeah, get your popcorn. So here we go. We get a JW broadcast from a governing body member that seems to be really ethical and stuff. Gets certified as a real estate investor in Satan's world, and then there's a good chance I'm going to kill you for spending time in school to learn about being a real estate investor. We are in for a treat this month with Brother Jedele. And as I mentioned, it's your standard format with the music, the graphics, and more, and begins by CCIM, governing body member Jedele teasing us. He just teases us right from the outset. I settled into my chair, coffee in hand, and you would think I would have learned by now, people. But he opens with the words, quote, "What kind of father is Jehovah?" We'll learn in this month's program and see why we can feel safe and secure as part of his family, end quote. And out shot the coffee through my nose, my mouth, onto my PC monitor, and down the front of my shirt. I have no one to blame but myself at this point. I foolishly thought I would get a lay-down introduction and a preview of coming wisdom, but nope. He opened it with Jehovah, fatherhood, and why everyone should feel safe and secure as part of Jehovah's Witnesses. And look, hot coffee does not feel good coming out of your nostrils. It doesn't feel good at all. But from the outset, the fun begins. A member of the governing body wants everyone to know that Jehovah's Witnesses feel safe and secure in their little family. And, well, except for a few people, just a few tens of thousands, otherwise known as children. I know it's easy to overlook, but as a small sampling of those that apparently missed the memo on how they should feel safe and secure in Jehovah's family and with his fatherhood, we have a few thousand people in Australia between 1950 and 2015 that might tell you they didn't feel so safe and secure. You might remember the Royal Commission found files on well over 1,000 alleged perpetrators of children, with over 1,800 victims, from an organization that is going to claim this month that people are safe and secure, that has a policy of not reporting child abuse to police. Or maybe the United States, where investigations suggest potentially thousands of victims of child abuse. One estimate suggests 18,000 alleged abusers in the secret Jehovah's Witness database. It's all very safe and secure, though. In 22 to 23, multiple cases were filed in the state of Pennsylvania here in the U.S. I guess those folks who filed them weren't feeling so safe and secure. Or how about the United Kingdom, where in 2018, more than 100 people contacted the newspaper The Guardian with allegations of child sexual abuse within UK congregations? But again, who's keeping track? Brother Jedele, the CCIM investor, soon to be king, when not investing in real estate, he wants to assure us that Jehovah's Witnesses have the world's greatest father and that they should feel safe and secure. And even then, with this opening intro, just a sentence and coffee down the front of me, I couldn't help but think that this must also include the estimated 70 to 80,000 Jehovah's Witnesses who are thrown out and shunned annually. And so I guess the 1% of their membership who lose their families, their friends, their kids, they feel safe and secure too, Brother Jedele? But who's counting, right? Who counts? Doesn't do a lot for this whole Jehovah saw the embryo of me thing, or Jehovah has the hairs of my head numbered thing, or leave the 99 sheep to find the one lost thing. But hey, let's talk about what a great father Jehovah is as evidenced in his earthly organization. And I want to tell you right now, be patient. This was just the opening sentence of the broadcast. He goes on to preview the episode as is standard by saying we're going to dig for treasures in the Bible book of Nahum and meet a sister who stuck by her father through trials, and they flash a photograph of her in the hospital, and I just can't imagine what must be coming. Is it new light that Jesus forgot to tell us in March? Can Jehovah's Witnesses now donate blood? Can you transfuse a stranger's blood in your body to stay alive? What could it be? What a coincidence this is. Let me just disappoint you now. It's none of the above. But he continues by saying they're going to debut 2 new series this month, including how Jehovah trains Jehovah's Witnesses if they just make full-time service a goal. And then, of course, it's followed by a blah, 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 blah. But as is the standard, the future king gets the meat of this broadcast with this opening talk, and most of this episode here in Paradise is going to focus on this talk. I know this will shock you, but when he opens with your standard introduction of juvenile commentary that sounds like it was written for 3rd graders, you just have to sit up and pay attention. And I've got to tell you, go watch this. Don't take the evil commentary of this apostate. He speaks to us like we're about 2 years old. It's incredible how bad the speaking has gotten with these guys. It literally grates on your nerves. But let's jump in. He starts out by asking, what comes to your mind when you hear the word father? A loving, affectionate man with deep concern for his family? Or an absent, neglectful, perhaps abusive abusive man? I put that in there. A lot depends on the kind of man our father is or was, end quote. And wow. With this kind of deep logic, I'm already transfixed on the May 2026 Jada broadcast. And as repetitive as this always is, I just can't imagine what kind of father Jehovah is. You get your standard commentary from the governing body that Jehovah is a father. And then Brother Jedele does something unintentionally hilarious. He says, quote, true, the Bible uses many titles to describe Jehovah, but Jesus' frequent use of the term father highlights how Jehovah wants to be known by his worshipers, end quote. And thankfully, I was not drinking coffee at that point. I literally just groaned and put my head down on my desk. This is something that very few Jehovah's Witnesses know or even contemplate because they've grown up with the New World Translation. But listen, let me help you out, King Jodi. I got nothing on you with that whole property investment thing, but listen, Jesus frequently called him Father in the Bible. This is awkward because the name Jehovah did not exist. The pronunciation Jehovah is a medieval invention, combining the consonants of YHWH with the vowels of Adonai, and was not in use during the time of Jesus or the apostles, so Jesus never used the name Jehovah. And so it begins. From the outset, he dodges the fact that the name Jehovah should not even be in the New Testament, that they added it into their fancy Bible, but also that Jesus called him Father, because he needs to say that to get this talk rolling and make a few points. Never mind the facts, facts be damned. Within a few sentences, anybody with a basic education, and therein lies the problem for Jehovah's Witnesses, would recognize that the king, Jedele, he's made several errors here. Or could it be that he's just lying? Or is there an outside chance he doesn't even know? He has spent a lot of time becoming a real estate investor. I'll let you be the judge. But just as my groan subsided, he doubles down on the dumb by saying that Jesus has a lot of titles too, including Michael the Archangel, and I was again glad to not be drinking coffee. Well, Jodi, here we go again. Maybe you should just stick to capital gains? I don't know. And sorry, yes, I'm being snarky, but you see, that is just the opinion of the guys this same Jesus, at least we're told, chose to lead this organization. Because most mainstream Christian Orthodox views of Michael the Archangel isn't Jesus. You see, Michael was created as an angel and Jesus is above the angels. They try to go to Hebrews 1:6, which indicates that all angels, including this Michael, archangel you mentioned, they all worship Jesus, suggesting that they're separate and distinct beings, but don't be troubled by that, Jodi. Don't stress about it. Within just seconds of the opening of this talk and this broadcast, we have a litany of errors. And this is usually where Jehovah's Witnesses are checking out anyway. They're grabbing a lifesaver to stay awake, or they're secretly scrolling their phones in their lap. It's incredible. These are from the finest teachers on earth, I might say. Bad, whatever. Needless to say, this talk is all about Jehovah being the bestest father ever. Jesus was his son, so being a dad was the best thing ever for Jehovah. And while I'm not purposely trying to be annoying here, Brother Jedele does it yet again by trying to impress us with how many times the word father is used in the Gospels alone. And in case you're ever on Jeopardy or you're playing Trivial Pursuit, is that still a thing, by the way? You'll be happy to know that Jesus uses the word father over 160 times in the gospel. Jodi, I gotta tell you, at this point in the talk, and we're only seconds in, this is getting really uncomfortable. Considering you were supposedly handpicked by this same Jesus, but listen, dude, he didn't call him Jehovah because the name hadn't been invented yet. Just a reminder. I'm not sure if they taught you that when you were investing in real estate, but it's true. It's really true. So, Father, Pops, Daddy, Holy One, Big Guy, yeah, let's go with Father. I'd say Jesus picked the best one he could. But then Jodi says this, quote, "The point? To Jehovah, we're family," end quote. Damn. If we're family, how does Jehovah treat the neighbors? Or how about the IRS? Or how about other religions? Because Jehovah, without question, it is a fact, has been watching his, quote, family die and be killed in heinous manner since the 1950s, and only recently told his, quote, family that they could have avoided dying by storing their own blood instead. And so from the outset, the theme of feeling safer and more secure is just growing in me by the minute, Brother Jedele. I'm sure those 26 kids on the cover of the May 22nd, 1994 Awake feel very safe and secure, too, with their father, Jehovah. I'm being told in my ear. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me correct that. Those kids are dead. Well, I'm sure their parents feel safe and secure about it now that they can learn they could have stored their own blood. Never mind, right? Carry on. Tell us why Jehovah is still a great father and how we are his family. So Brother Jedele goes on to say, quote, "The more we comprehend the kind of father Jehovah is, his personality, his affection for us, the more we'll love and trust him as our heavenly Father," end quote. Listen, I have a past episode on dissecting Jehovah's personality using only the Bible. Check it out if you're interested. But whenever you hear the word trust from one of these guys, you know how it's eventually going to be applied in the talk, and it's going to be to them, the governing body. Because Jehovah, trusts only the 11 of them. So what kind of proof does Jodi have? Well, oh no. I mean, Brother Jedele has to get out of his own way at some point during the broadcast, doesn't he? Well, he doesn't. And I swear the current writing committee is all kinds of bad. And I mean real bad. And it tells you a lot about the governing body. 11 men without a single one speaking up and saying, yeah, guys, hey, this is some really bad reasoning we're unveiling. Tell the writing committee to take another shot at this talk. None of them do it. No grown-ups in the room. Which may explain all this father stuff they're talking about this month. Less than 5 minutes into this broadcast and talk, King Jedele takes us to the only place they always need to go, the Bible. But not just anywhere in the Bible. He takes the audience to the Bible book of Genesis, a highly accurate book whose first 2 chapters actually contradict each other. But don't get all technical and stuff, people. You're not supposed to be actually thinking if you're a Jehovah's Witness. He takes the audience to Genesis 1:26, complete with snippets from their past Adam and Eve movies, before our first human parents realized that everyone could see their junk, including this loving father we're talking about. And then Brother Jedele drops this, quote, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." And that makes sense. Children often share characteristics of their parents. So what characteristics do we share with Jehovah? End quote. Oh no. Wait a minute. He did not. He did. He did. And with that, he just gave me and anyone listening to this absurd talk carte blanche to answer that question. What characteristics do you and I share with Jehovah? Our parent. I hit the pause button at this point so I could consider my own answers. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was a lot of fun. I started simple. Here are a few of my answers, ranging from the obvious to those with maybe some deeper meaning. What do I have in common with Jehovah who made me in his image? Well, how about number 1? I'm happy to report that I look just like Dad, except for that whole invisible spirit part. Number 2, I don't celebrate my birthdays either, not because they're pagan, because just like Dad, I have no beginning and I have no end. Or how about 3? As a really imperfect guy with OCD, I find myself saying, in the beginning, all the time, just like Dad, over and over. But then I move to the more important things that make me just like my father. And even though I was having so much fun with this question, I decided to just keep my answers to those obvious characteristics I picked up from just the Old Testament. For example, and I don't know if this is revealing too much, but I too like to watch people walk around in the nude. I know. I mean, I like that. Does that make me a voyeur? I picked this one up from my father. I mean, yeah, I don't, people. Just calm down. I don't even like to see myself in the nude, all right? But then I thought, well, what else? What else did I get from Dad? Well, I too put 2 bowls of candy on the table and tell my kids that they can look at them, but they aren't allowed to touch them or even eat the candy, or I'm going to make sure they die. I got that from Dad. I often ignore talking to snakes and I let them do what they want. Got that one from Dad. I tend to look, I should say, the other way when my kids fight and one of them decides to kill their brother or sister, and then I just banish him and he runs away and he marries his other sister. I don't know. I'll even say how much regret my kids, and even the regret I feel towards my kids, I should say, I put that on a billboard. I like to state that, man, these kids are driving me nuts. I regret making them. I regret making my kids. I put it on a billboard for all of history and everyone to read. By putting it in the world's most published book, sorry, I'm off the tracks. And I'll even let bullies beat the crap out of my kids while I stand back and watch. All of this I got from Dad. Do I need to keep going, Jodi? There, I had some fun. You might want to stay away from this claim that all of us were made in Jehovah's image, considering the vast majority of mankind has demonstrated deeper love for their children than Jehovah has for his. Unless you can explain why he didn't let them store blood for the past 70 years, even when he knew that they could. Every time this group of men try this whole "you're made in Jehovah's image" thing, it falls flat. Most imperfect, flawed human father would still never, under any circumstances, kick back with a bowl of popcorn and watch his children being harmed when it's in his power to stop it. So, okay, this talk and episode of Surviving Paradise is over. Let's move on. Not really. But you could end it there because there's no retort to that. Brother Jedele then says, quote, "They're not just physical, don't want to misquote him. That's my smart ass coming out. Quote, they're not physical characteristics because Jehovah is a spirit being." End quote. You don't say. Thanks for clearing that up, Brother Jedele, because I've long wondered why I'm only 5'10" and a half. I mean, how is a guy supposed to get a date when I'm not at least 6 foot tall? Was I made in Jehovah's image? Was he 5'10"? Never mind. I chalked it up to being made in Jehovah's image this whole time. He tells me we're made in his image because we can display his qualities. And at the risk of massive, endless redundancy, which is the show weekly sometimes, what the hell do I do with this? Again, see past episodes, folks, but I know better imperfect fathers that the invisible one in the Bible, who even gives bullies permission to torture his kids, would not do. They wouldn't do that. Seriously, Jodi? Forget that I can't physically look like the invisible daddy, but qualities? He's even going to let the same bully make several runs at hurting his kids, even after 1,000 years of perfection. Am I the only one who sees Job at the end of the 1,000 years going, "Are you freaking kidding me? I gotta do this again? I mean, what do I gotta do to prove I'm a good guy? What's wrong with this picture?" And frankly, sticking with the theme, do you know a single human father that would do this to his kids? Anybody? Raise your hand. But as the talk continues, Brother Jedele takes us to a scripture. 1 John 4:8, another one of my favorites for shepherding calls back in the day, where it tells us, quote, "Whoever does not love has not come to know God, because God is love." End quote. Nothing new here. But he's insinuating that we should be loving like Jehovah. But it's what he says next that is chilling, especially for people who have been abused by this organization. He says, quote, "Jehovah is an affectionate, caring father who loves his family. We have the ability to love him and feel his love." End quote. Folks, this is just straight gaslighting. It's dishonest. It's complete insanity. This year alone in 2026, upwards of 80,000 people will be kicked out of Jehovah's Witnesses for a wide range of reasons, most of which are not laws or mentioned in the Bible. Those people will remain on the outside of this organization until further notice, if not forever. Now I ask you, do you, for the parents out there, punish your children by putting them in a timeout or grounding them to their room until they die? Is that what you do as a loving parent? Because that is exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses do when they shun people. People are in timeout so long that their family members die and they don't even know that they've passed away because no one tells them they're being shunned. Is this the same affectionate, caring father that the real estate mogul is talking about in this talk? Do those people, upwards of 80,000 a year, feel his love, as he said? We all know why this ridiculous talk is being given. We've heard many, many like them before. Whenever these men start doing deep dives on Jehovah's personality, it's always to associate themselves, the governing body, with Jehovah's good qualities. He goes on to say, quote, "Let's look at 3 ways Jehovah shows his love for his children. First, as a loving father, Jehovah cares for us. At 1 Peter 5:7, we are told, while you throw all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you. Caring for someone can convey the idea of providing for someone's physical needs, which is a good thing. But is Jehovah's care limited by simply providing for physical needs? No." End quote. He then takes the audience and points to 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4 and says that Jehovah becomes emotionally involved in our lives. And it's at this point that I know why this talk is being given. And look, I know I'm biased. I'm out. But I used to give these talks just like this, trying to pull on the heartstrings, trying to look at all the good stuff from Dad. It's what these men do when they know the majority of Jehovah's Witnesses are tired, beat up, and suffering, broken, maybe even reeling from the last round of New Light on blood. And they need to remind them that their invisible sky daddy will make everything better. Wait for it. Someday. He goes on some rant with yet another terrible illustration about going to the doctor. But just imagine now, the doctor is also your father. What a coincidence. It's all very personal to Jehovah, according to Jodi. Unless, of course, again, you're one of the precious souls here listening that has been abused. Or maybe you've stayed in an abusive marriage because the elders encouraged it. Or maybe you've been shunned. Or you've watched someone you love die that didn't have to. Other than that, according to Jodi Jedele, Jehovah, it's all very personal to him. And look, none of this reasoning in any of these talks ever adds up. Not when you have, again, imperfect, flawed human fathers that would never, even on a bad day, allow such things to happen to their kids. This stuff doesn't work. It's silly, it's pandering, and it's intellectually insulting to the audience. And he can't get out of it because he said it himself. Remember? You and I, the imperfect, flawed fathers, mothers, whatever, we're all made in his image. So why is Jehovah allowing all this harm to his kids, not just worldwide, but inside the organization? Why? Because we wouldn't allow it. Are you going to sit back and watch someone abuse your child? And he's here claiming in this talk that we get this sense of love and morality from Jehovah, who sits back and watches people abuse children. But as if all of this isn't insulting enough, he then wants us to know how Jehovah shows he loves us. How does he show he loves us? We need some proof. Not physically, of course. We've got that out of the way. But what? He does it in other ways. He continues by saying this, quote, "Has he cared for you through spiritual siblings, your brothers and sisters in the congregation who imitate Jehovah's love and tender mercy," end quote. Do they? Well, no, Jodi. You see, it's not a small coincidence, and it adds to my absolute devastation that it was actually one of these spiritual siblings that actually harmed me. It was actually some of my spiritual siblings that kicked me out. He continues by saying, quote, "or perhaps comforted or strengthened you through a particular Bible account, or perhaps it gave meaning to one of his promises," end quote. Here we go. He's listing all the wonderful reasons to be a Jehovah's Witness and be with your father, right? You've got brothers and sisters that are going to help you. Sometimes we've got Bible accounts that encouraged you. And if you're not sick of me yet, folks, I don't blame you. I'm sick of hearing this. I am in such a burnout with these guys right now. You're about to be sick of me because they make this so damn easy with these talks. Yes, Brother Jedele, I know that was the case with me. I was encouraged by a Bible account or two. In fact, here's one of those accounts that made me really see how much my Father loves us. I felt a lot of love. It was these sorts of meaningful promises from our Heavenly Father that really landed home for me. Thanks for pointing to the Bible. It comes to us, I pulled this out of my ear from Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. See if you can spot anything. It reads, quote, "Now, when men started to grow in number on the surface of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of the true God began to notice that the daughters of men were beautiful." Pay attention here. "So they began taking as wives all whom they chose. Then," special attention, "then Jehovah said, 'My spirit will not tolerate man indefinitely, because he is only flesh. Accordingly, his days will amount to 120 years, end quote. Wow, okay. Let's dissect this. We're 6 chapters into this Bible that also shows how much Jehovah loves his children here on earth. Let me get this straight. Jehovah's kids, his personal kids in heaven, otherwise known as angels, got hot and horny and came down and started having sex with human females. It's a lot like a really sick person spending too much time at the pet shop eyeing the poodles and thinking, "Oh, they're kind of cute. I got an idea." Then Jehovah said, quote, "I'm so sick of men that they got 120 years, then I'm going to drown them all." Wait a minute. I'm doing some thinking. Did I read that correctly? His personal sons in heaven went sideways, and so he decided to punish the neighbor kids by drowning them all? Your spirit guys just got busy banging our women, but he doesn't say a word about them. The very next verse says he's sick of men. Like, what did we do? The men who just lost their hot wives to his horny angels. WTF. You know what happens next? As with everything, oh man, I love him. My guy Noah enters the chat, and the rest is history, folks. And thank God, as Brother Jodi says here, our Father loved the unborn generations of people enough to let my guy Noah survive him drowning all the neighbor kids for something that his kids in heaven were doing. What? Genesis 6, 1 through 3. My angels went down there and started having sex. I'm not going to tolerate man anymore. Let's drown him. Interesting. This is some really interesting stuff. Oh, Jodi Jedele. You really should put more thought into these talks. So we got Jehovah taking care of us by means of Bible verses, according to him. What else you got, Brother Jedele? He goes on to say, quote, let's look at a second way Jehovah is a loving father. He allows us to have open communication with him. Open communication is vital for happy families. So, if he is in the heavens, how can we have open communication with him? By means of prayer, end quote. And here we go. Remember, this talk is built around him trying to stress that Jehovah is a fantastic father. He wants us to feel safe and secure. He needs Jehovah's Witnesses to look beyond the 11 men in New York to someone that doesn't communicate or talk to them at all. I am not here trying to bash people's Christian faith, nor am I going to spend time discussing the power of prayer with a religious or even a non-religious person. But the fact remains, a human father is present in your life and communicates verbally and physically back with you, and Jehovah does not. Period. But Brother Jedele doubles down and says, quote, but Jehovah does more than simply listen to your prayers. He answers them, end quote. Does he now? Really? How so? When you desperately need a hug from your father, but you can't see him and he only communicates through 11 guys in New York, how exactly is he answering my prayers? When I asked him if I could store my own blood in 1974, why didn't he answer my prayer till March of 2026? And despite them throwing out prayers on a regular basis, the subject is very complex. And when you involve the 11 of them in the subject, it gets even messier. Would you like some examples of how prayer is an interesting thing to throw out? From the Watchtower of March 15th, 1988, page 5, under the subheading, why do some believers often not get answers to their prayers? Wait a minute, hold on. I thought Brother Jedele said he listens and answers. Quote, belief alone is not sufficient to please God and have him answer our prayers. Even a credulous person may claim that he believes. For belief to have substance, it must be based on accurate knowledge, which can be gained only by a study of the Bible. With guess who? Quote, additionally, belief and faith must be proved by the works they produce. As the body without spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. End quote. Forgive me, I want to share this. It continues in the next paragraph, quote, a true believer would need to take God into account daily, not resorting to prayer only when faced with an emergency. He would also do acts of faith, right works. What? That includes speaking to others about his belief and faith in God, end quote. Oh, he's got to be a publisher of Jehovah's Witnesses to get his, okay, got it. As is always inferred, you must be a Jehovah's Witness for God to hear you, and even that isn't a guarantee, because if you're a weak one, shame on you. Sort of like your human father, right? I mean, a human father would treat a kid like this. But please, carry on. Tell us more about all the love, safety, and security we should be feeling. If you're wondering, how exactly does Jehovah, our Father, answer these prayers? I'm glad you asked, because he then says, quote, Jehovah inspired Bible writers to record his thoughts for us. When we read and meditate on the scriptures, as well as the spiritual food provided by the faithful and discreet slave, there it is, Jehovah uses his Holy Spirit to draw our attention to what we need to hear, to direct our thoughts to his thoughts. End quote. You simply can't make it up. That is the foundation stone of this talk. It's them, the governing body. A talk about how personal and loving your relationship with Jehovah is. But he really only answers you through a book that, incidentally, yet another mistake, was compiled by his arch enemy Satan and his litany of false religions over many centuries. Oh, and by the way, you also need the faithful slave, which as of 2012 is the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, in order for Jehovah to answer you. They alone have Jehovah's thoughts and Holy Spirit. It's all so very intimate. And he needs to run it all through some mystical, unexplainable form through the 11 guys in New York. Long gone are the days of answering through burning bushes or from clouds or talking animals. He now uses, and how awkward, the very man giving this talk, Jodi Jedele, a former real estate investor, to answer your prayers. Isn't that great? And I can attest that this is true. I was praying to him about whether I should become a certified commercial investment member in real estate, and boom, I found Jodi Jedele's YouTube video. I mean, a governing body member told me to do it. He might be interested in decades worth of studies from noted psychologists on this subject of prayer alone, who can teach you about things like, I don't know, confirmation bias, placebo effects, even cognitive processing. When individuals are heavily invested in a desired outcome, they tend to notice and interpret ambiguous events as validation of their hopes, but we don't need to talk about that. Brother Jedele continues by saying, he can also use his servants, or even those not yet his servants or non-Jehovah's Witnesses. Wait a minute, what? Isn't that bad association? Why would I be talking to someone that isn't a Jehovah's Witness? Hey, I need you to say something to me that answers a prayer to Jehovah. Jehovah is now answering my prayers through unbelievers, according to Jodi Jedele. And yes, they love the paradox of this one. Consider just one example. Man, this is great. From the May 2023 Watchtower, page 12, paragraphs 13 and 14, under the subheading, he may use people who do not worship him. It says, quote, at times, Jehovah answers the prayers of his people by moving unbelievers to act in their behalf. A sister named Sue Hing felt that Jehovah helped her by means of her doctor. Hippocratic oath be damned, or the fact that he's a doctor. Throw that out, guys. Back to the quote. Her son suffers from several mental health problems. When he was involved in a terrible accident, she and her husband resigned from their work to care for him. As a result, they had financial problems. Sue Hing said that she felt like a rubber band that was stretched to the limit. She poured out her heart to Jehovah, asking him for help. The consulting doctor took an interest in their case. This led to their receiving government assistance and an affordable place to live. Afterwards, Sue Hing said, we saw Jehovah's hand in this matter. He truly is the hearer of prayer, end quote. Okay. Doctor, government aid, taxes, none of it was a factor. And I just got to say this to Jodi Jedele and the governing body. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I can prove it, that there are just really good, intelligent people on this planet that are actually aware of government programs for those in need. But this was chalked up as Jehovah answering this woman's prayer. And all I could think of is, if Jehovah's answering her prayer, Why didn't he help their son with his already severe mental health problems be saved or avoid the accident that caused them so much pain? Because I'm pretty sure a loving, imperfect human father with a mentally disabled child who just watches them ride their bikes into traffic would probably put a stop to it. But not Jehovah. It's a very odd flex that the governing body tries to work into talks all the time. And here is another interesting reference to consider if you're thinking prayer is one of the ways Jehovah shows he loves you. From the Watchtower of September 15th, 1991, page 4. Quote, "Even though you make many prayers, I am not listening." Jehovah told Satan? Oh, no, told the Israelites, pointing out the reason he continued with bloodshed, your very hands have become filled. End quote. Wait a minute. He wasn't listening to his kids' prayers? I thought this whole talk was how he was listening to our prayers. Were his kids like the Israelites? What? Bloodshed? They had bloodshed on their hands? Has Jehovah been listening to the governing body's prayers since, I don't know, let's say 1950? When they told Jehovah's Witnesses we couldn't use our own stored blood to save our own lives? 76 years later, Jehovah decided to fix that. Lots of dead people. What about the people he was watching during those 7 decades? Would this constitute bloodshed on anyone's hands? Has he been hearing our prayers or the governing bodies? We can neither confirm nor deny. Nonetheless, in the May 2026 JDub broadcast, the governing body is telling us we can only get answers to our prayers if we're associated with the 11 of them, the very guys who have bloodshed on their hands. Do with that what you will. I'm going to beat this drum like crazy if it's already driving you nuts. It's shocking. But the future king goes on a rant with a lame illustration about kids on a long car trip not having patience and how Jehovah's Witnesses should be patient regarding the end of this system of things because Jehovah is driving the car and stuff, and we'll get there eventually. And I waited for him to work it into his illustration, but it never came. You know, Jehovah turning around and looking into the back seat and torturing his kids by saying, "Hey, we've arrived," when they really hadn't. You know, kind of like he's done to Jehovah's Witnesses since the late 1780s, with over 31 dates in print in their literature pointing to the indication that we are at the end of the world. They so believed 31 times that they had arrived and he was just teasing and torturing his kids, they built mansions for people like my guy Noah and King David, bunk beds. Jehovah has told the kids in the car to borrow his illustration, that they were there. We've come to our destination so many times that I can't imagine why the kids in the back seat are impatient or maybe even peeing their pants because he's not even hitting the rest stops. But another great illustration, King Jedele, and what a distraction from the fact that you have told us over 31 times that we are on the brink of Armageddon. That Jehovah torturing his kids like that, so interesting. The talk continues with a lot of blah, 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 blah. I just can't do it. He moves finally on to the third way Jehovah is a loving father, by telling us that Jehovah works hard for his family. And I already know what he's teeing up for us. He moves the audience to the subject of discipline. Here it comes. He frames discipline as Jehovah just kind of guiding us through the Bible and even people in the congregation. They all guide us. It's discipline. You'll note Jehovah disciplines through, here it is again. He says it, the governing body and the congregation, including the elders. The seed is planted that anything announced from the stage comes from your very loving, safe, and secure Father, Jehovah. It did not come from those three elders you awkwardly sat down with, told your secrets to, including disgusting questions like colors of your underwear. Didn't come from them. It continues with blah, blah, blah on fatherless people. I've covered it all before. And then he says something really funny when he says, quote, remember, you're part of Jehovah's family. Around the globe, literally millions of Jehovah's worshipers love you. End quote. Folks, most Jehovah's Witnesses can't even name everyone in their local congregation. He says this even as Jehovah's Witnesses are sitting in prison cells around the world as he is buying a resort property in the country of Denmark. He says this into the camera after his buddy Garrett Loesch just admitted they've been getting people killed with an old light blood doctrine. He says this as the elderly are ignored in their congregations and teenagers are only spoken to when they make a mistake, as they inevitably will. Bringing it close to home, my elderly mother has been a Jehovah's Witness since 1972, and she hasn't heard from a single person in her congregation in many, many years. They don't even know where she lives. She's been forgotten. Now it's only her apostate son, me, taking care of her. Nothing is as great a lie as this whole concept of worldwide brotherhood, which only calls into question, guess who? The Father, Jehovah himself, because his family seems a bit toxic, dysfunctional. And don't give me that it's getting worse in these last days. It's been this way since I was a kid, including the fact that his organization and faithful slave used to print racist teachings. Yeah, what a family. It's in print. This talk finally comes to its glorious end, thank God, or thank Daddy, Father. They move us into an interview with a sister that had a brain tumor and lost a baby, and these really bother me. I hate these. It seems to be a regular part of JW broadcasting now. I know how they do this because I used to be an elder, and they would send out, the circuit overseer would send out a note to the elder saying, do you know of any really awful experiences that we can use on the assembly? Same concept. I felt terrible for this sister and her family, but I couldn't help but feel like they continue to leverage tragedies to make points about the organization. The video during this point features somber music and even shots of her holding up unused baby clothes. It's sickening. And yeah, I'm not going to lie. There was a slight grin on my face at one point. I immediately thought how that sister must have been thinking she lost her precious baby, but it's okay because the baby's just an enemy of God anyway. Remember? Stephen Lett said it. Just a little enemy of God. The absurdity. Brother Jedele then announces what he calls a new series. It's titled Full-Time Service Builds Christian Qualities. We meet an interracial couple, which I thought was interesting, also refreshing, something the organization openly used to discourage in print. Should do an episode on it. Back when Jehovah didn't really approve of interracial couples and their life of them, these two, this couple building kingdom halls, complete with video shots of them with wheelbarrows and shovels, and we're all just smiling along. All of them as they demonstrate their service to the governing body. And as you might imagine, as Brother Jedele says, it made them as people more loving like Jehovah because they're giving free labor to the organization. This is then followed by a talk on reminders that was really interesting. Don't have time. I may want to cover this next week because it's a really interesting talk by a brother who doesn't give talks, and it's super weird, at least in my opinion. There's yet another segment on reaching out for new assignments in the organization. It was boring as hell. We then get one of the worst music videos that we get a new one every month. And I still can't believe I'm saying that. Jehovah's Witnesses condemned televangelism and MTV back in the day, But now they are in the business of making music videos, writing songs and jingles. And then comes a deep dive as they dig for treasure in the Bible book of Nahum. It's a follow-up to the book of Jonah. You remember him, right? The guy that didn't want to go in field service. Trust me, I can relate, bud. But got tossed overboard into this ocean and was swallowed by a giant fish. He somehow, it's also history, much like my guy Noah, he somehow lived inside a giant fish or whale for 3 days, soaking in stomach acid and without any oxygen in the dark, swimming around on the world's first roller coaster ride. But trust me, Jonah was a real person. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Jonah was right. Him going to Nineveh was all a waste of time, as highlighted in this broadcast, because the book of Nahum is Jehovah changing his mind again and wiping out the Ninevites anyway, killing them all, burning them. It doesn't say a lot for Jehovah's foreknowledge of the future, or bottled gourd plants, or dudes inside fishes. But we got a story, Jonah and its follow-up, Nahum. It's really interesting stuff. If you're following the theme of the May 2026 Jada broadcast, Jehovah is a loving father, and he makes you feel safe and secure. Like Jonah, like Nahum, or, well, unless you're a Ninevite, but again, skip it. Jehovah changes his mind a lot, and you should always feel safe and secure about it. To close the broadcast, in comes the real estate investor who would be a king, Brother Jedele, who says, quote, "In this program, we learned we have the most loving Father in the universe, Jehovah God," end quote. And then he takes us, as they always do, it's a staple, to Africa and the country of Gabon. Video shots of gorilla, whales, even snakes, and it includes photographs of African Jehovah's Witnesses sitting outside in the scorching elements under thatch-roofed huts that barely cover them, without any running toilets or water, even as the same guy hosting this is buying luxury resorts in Denmark for $16 million. The witnesses watching on the May broadcast, they don't bat an eye. They just feel safer and more secure thanks to Brother Jedele and his 10 friends. But a parting thought. Did you know, on this subject of loving fatherhood and feeling safe and secure, did you know that it's one of the governing body's favorite subjects? Did you know that this even applies to things like, wow, skateboards? Yeah, skateboards. Satan's on the loose, but I want to share with you what the governing body has to say about skateboards. Jehovah has long been concerned about safety and security and skateboards. From the Awake of July 22nd, 1978, page 30, under the titled article, Skateboard Dangers. Jehovah's guys said this, quote, "Skateboards have developed from a single plank of wood with 2 small wheels on each end to more sophisticated ones, including some powered by small motors. But their increased usage has also resulted in an increased number of accidents. In a recent 12-month period in the United States, 24 deaths and 106,000 injuries were attributed to skateboard accidents." End quote. Wow. The governing body and Jehovah, as well as the King, Jesus Christ, have demonstrated that we're all very safe and secure, and that includes tidbits on skateboarding. Even as the blood doctrine changed, people shun their children, and thousands of innocent kids, victims of abuse, litigate Jehovah's only organization. But despite all of this, we're assured by the governing body that Jehovah is a loving Father, that they alone can provide safety and security. Do you agree? Well, if you don't, at least you know better than to be wild and crazy on a skateboard. Thanks for joining me this week. Thank you to King Jodi Jedele for the May 2026 JW broadcast. And wherever you may be well.